Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We truly do appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you're listening on, and head over to social media and give us a follow there as well to stay up to date on all the exciting episodes that we have coming up in the future. Today, we are sitting down with country music singer-songwriter Michael Ray. We talked to him the day before he was set to play the Grand Ole Opry for the 57th time. It's an amazing number, and we talked to him about the first time and the fact that playing the iconic venue has not lost its magic even after all these years and all the times of playing. We also talked to him about growing up in Florida and the importance that his family has had on his musical career, and finally moving to Nashville and what that has meant for taking him to the next level. So please enjoy our conversation with Michael Ray. Are you prepping for a show at the Opry tomorrow?
Yeah, we play tomorrow.
Yeah, and by my count, is that 57?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
That's insane. And I tried to look it up and find who has played the most, but I couldn't find it. Do you know, does anyone know that?
I don't know who's played the most. I know Mark Wills played it like 200 and something times before he became a member. And then like Chris Jansen played it like 100 and something before he became a member. So there's definitely more than me, but we all, every time we play it, it's like the first, it's just pretty surreal to think that, I remember April 24th, 2015 was my debut, and played it this many times since then. And I think tomorrow's the first show back with full crowd.
Right.
Yeah, I think tomorrow. So, which is cool because I played like every version of the Opry during quarantine. I played it when we were on a bar stool and there was nobody in the crowd. Played it to where it was acoustic. The band wasn't even there. I played it right before they shut down or stopped having everybody there. And then I've played it, a few times with limited capacity. And so now I'm playing the first day back. So it's been, weird times, but it's been kind of cool being able to, be a part of all those moments.
Yeah. And let's go back to April 24th, 2015. And I know you've talked about it a lot and stepping in that circle with your dad and your uncle and the fact that you had always known when you played the Opry for the first time, you didn't want to step in that circle without them for the first time. And so just talk about the emotion behind that. Because like I say, you've talked about it on social media, but I want to really know like the emotions that were running through you at that time.
Yeah, man. We had a family band, or they did, when I was a kid before I was born and until I was probably early elementary age. And it was my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, and cousins, that generation of our family. And
right.
My dad was the lead singer. My uncle played bass, and my grandfather, he was the one that taught all of us music. He was the one that taught us all about country music, and was the one that was putting guitars in everybody's hands and making everybody learn harmony and sing. And after the family band kind of split, he kept playing like 4 nights a week, and anywhere, whether it be an American Legion or a Moose Lodge or a community center or whatever, he was 4 nights a week he was playing. And so, the conversation was always when we're all, if I don't know how we get there from Eustis, Florida, but when we get there, we're all gonna do it together. And he unfortunately passed 2 months before we played, got to debut on the Opry.
Did he know? Did you know before he passed that you were going to be playing the Opry?
No, man, no, he didn't. He did. He got to hear my songs on the radio and and all that, but it was literally, I'll never forget it, man. He passed on February 4th, 2015, and I got an email backstage at the Barclays Center, like in March, from Wes Boston, one of my publicists, and he said, "Hey, man, pick your Opry date." And it was such a weird, it's like a bittersweet moment. It was like, we did it, but damn it, like he was the one that taught us all about it. He was the one that I was watching he was the one teaching me about Minnie Pearl and Grandpa Jones and String Bean and Marty Stewart and, Porter Wagner, and list goes on. Jeannie Seeley, and showing us the importance of what the Opry was, and
Right.
is. So it was like this weird thing. I was like, we almost had it, and but then like, holy shit, I get to play the Opry, like one of the things. So it was that moment, and so I picked April 24th because it was the closest to his birthday. His birthday was April 27th, and so I picked that date, and I didn't want to step in it without my dad and my uncle stepping in first, because through the years of me learning guitar and going to gigs and vocal lessons and all the stuff, they were there and helping me, and they were just as influential as my grandpa was. So I told them, I said, I'm not stepping in the circle until me, my dad, and my uncle can step in it, together, like we all got here, and so we did, and I still got the photo, and we lost my uncle last year unexpectedly, and so it's even more, it means even more now, and the Opry being such a family and so family oriented. They were very kind and let me do that and honor my grandfather on the first on my debut. So it was it's a moment for every artist that you'll never forget, but for me it went even further than just being able to debut on the Opry.
I don't know how religious you are, but I know you believe in signs, and I know you believe your grandpa's looking down on you. And you were able to play his Gibson during your first song at the Opry. And so what did that mean? And throughout that first performance, were there any little signs that you were like, oh yeah, he's here?
Man, so one of the signs I always feel like I get is my grandmother's nickname was Penny. And ever since he passed, I'll see pennies. I'll find them randomly in weird places when there's moments, that kind of as a reminder.
Right.
I play the Opry 57 times coming up Friday, and I have 56 pennies because there's one every time I find one randomly. It might be like one time I was playing the Ryman, and I was about to go on, and I was staying in Monitor World, which is where the monitor guy is for anybody listening and watching. Side stage. And so I was standing there about to go on. I had not found one that day, so it was like, oh, and I don't go looking, it was just there.
Right.
So I was standing at side stage, and anybody that's ever stood side stage anywhere, it's dark, right there. And so I just happened to look over, and there was these cables wrapped up beside the Monitor World. And I looked down, and a penny was barely sticking out from underneath one of the cables right before I walked on. And my dad found one a couple of times when he came up. So those are my signs. I feel like I ended up getting a penny tattooed right here underneath my arm for my grandmother, and it's actually my drum head on my kick drum.
Nice.
Penny for her. So, and so I think those signs, man. I believe in God, and I believe that whenever people pass on, I do think that they still have communication, in some way, shape, or form. And I always think and like to believe that that's him with me. And when I debuted, my first song I did was Green Green Grass at Home, but Porter Wagner's version of it. And that was, I grew up on that song, grew up playing that song in my family's band. And in a way, I felt like that was him making his debut with me, because it was always like, when I play there, you're going to play there with me, and, life had a different set of cards it was dealing with. So he wasn't able to be there, but I felt like because the Opry allowed me to do that and allowed me to speak about it and do so much in his honor. My grandmother was there. She got to be there.
Right.
That Gibson made its debut, and that Gibson 335, and every photo I have of him, that's the guitar he played for 60 years. And so in a way, I felt like he was making it with me, even though he couldn't be there, physically. I knew that he was there spiritually. And then that guitar that played every Moose Lodge to the state of Florida, that every community center, every 4 nights a week, when my dad and everybody would give him crap because he'd be, he worked for the telephone company, and he was a firefighter in the day. And then he would work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and then still play 4 nights a week for free. Like, there wasn't a pay, there wasn't nothing. He'd be like, well, they're feeding us, but we're like, well, you're playing an assisted living home, so the food's not that good. It's not they're giving you good quality food here, but that was just his passion for country music. That's what he loved it. And so for me in that moment, it was very special, obviously for obvious reasons, but even more so being able to hold that guitar that I grew up watching him play as a kid. We played, he played it at every show we played together, and then got to stand in the circle and play a song that we all played together as a band, back in the day was pretty, it was emotional, man. I'll never forget looking over. Well, I finished the song, of course, emotional, look over, and it's my dad, my uncle, and my grandmother was in her wheelchair, and Ricky Skaggs standing right beside her. And I remember standing there and was like, how did we get, what in the world's going on? Like how did we get here? Just like one of those moments of very surreal, pinch me moment.
And that's an awesome segue, because how did we get here? On this podcast, it's called The Music Made Me. I love to take that journey. I love to find out how music has made a person. And we've already dug into it a lot, you talking about your younger years already. And one of the cool things is that I was watching your new video for Picture, and I was looking at the little description, and there was a line in there that said, music made him. Mm-hmm. Referring to you. And I thought that was cool, because that's exactly what this podcast is about. And so let's talk about your younger years when you were like 2 or 3. You're on stage with the Cousin Country Band, rocking out your little Kermit the Frog guitar. What is your first memory, that like vivid memory, not necessarily just from a photo or from people talking about it, but your first vivid memory of those times?
Man, there's a video of it somewhere, but I have a vague memory of being a kid and singing "Killing Time" by Clint Black as a baby, or small child, while they did their sound check. And my dad was always a big Clint Black fan, and as am I. And so he that song, I think, came out like a couple years before, or a few years before that. And so there's a video somewhere, but I vaguely remember being out there and doing that, singing that with that little fake guitar. I think my mom still has it. My mom has everything I've ever done in my life.
Oh, so, really?
Oh yeah. My mom still has everything that, if you want to, I think my first pair of boots, she has my everything, so your typical, mom who's saving everything, and you're thankful later on in life, so I think she still got it. But I remember that. And, one thing that I remember is my grandfather always, like, with my family's I have a big family, but everybody's really close. And we all grew up kind of on not the same piece of land, but kind of, like, we're all right there. And so my bus stop, was my dad's bus stop when he was a kid. It was right outside of my great grandmother's little tiny yellow block house, that she had. And for some reason, that's where we picked to always do gatherings, right? The tiniest house of everybody. That's where we wanted to fit 80 people, because great grandma's going to fix her biscuits and fried chicken and, all this stuff. And everybody's going to get together, and grandpa's going to bring guitars and full speakers and microphones and the entire thing. And so we would sit out front and play, and her house was one of the few houses of our families that was by the road. And so we would play, and people would pull off the side of the road and just listen.
Oh, really?
Hang for a little while or drive off, hang for a little bit and then drive, go on. Or sometimes they'd get out. And I just remember those days of us, all getting together, and we always joke, because somebody in the family would be like, y'all gonna pick, y'all gonna sing, and my grandpa would be like, oh, I guess so. And grandpa acting like we didn't know he just brought the entire sound system to play a arena. You know what I mean? Like, he'd be like, well, let me see what I got. And he's pulling out TV speakers. And I'm like, we knew you had this. But those moments are special, especially now, we've lost, quite a bit of them. But I think those were, probably my earliest memories of that era of my life.
And was it 9 when you started playing the guitar?
Yeah, 8 or 9. Yeah, my parents divorced when I was 8, and I was going to North Carolina with my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle Kenny, and my aunt Linda. One of my grandpa's brothers owns land up there.
Oh, okay.
So we were going up there, and it was during that weird time. If anybody's gone through a divorce as a child, you're trying to put it all together. It's strange, and my dad was going through what he was going through, and my mom, going through she was going through. So I think my grandparents wanted to just get me out, so I went with them. And like I said, they were always playing. Somebody was always playing guitar. Someone was always doing something with music. There was always something going on. And I remember going, man, I want to learn how to play. Like, I want to actually learn. I don't want to be just a kid, playing the Kermit Frog guitar. I want to actually do it.
Yeah.
And so my grandpa taught me my first three chords, and then it was just after that, we were there for like 6-7 days, and I remember on this old Epiphone that he had, this string, the action was like that far off, from the neck. The strings were that far off the neck, and I just remember, trying to learn how to, put your fingers on the chords and the strings, or make the chords on the strings, and it just became like I hear it say it all the time, but it was like a drug, and then the fact that my grandfather was still playing all the time, I wanted to play in his band, and I wanted to learn, I wanted to impress him, I wanted to beat him, I wanted to, to make him go, oh man, that's cool, and so it just became this thing and an outlet, and I think my grandfather knew that during
Yeah.
that time. I think he knew that I needed that outlet because it's such a pivotal moment in a lot of kids' lives. A divorce, and I ain't gonna lie, it wasn't there was no smooth walking away. It wasn't an easy one,
Right.
So it was a hard time there for a little while, and it just, music literally probably, pointed me to a different path than what I could have taken,
Right.
during that time, and it was all because my grandfather, through that old Epiphone that was probably 50 years old, and had me start learning guitar. So,
And how long did it take you to start playing with him in his band?
dude, when I started learning, it was literally all I did.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
every day I was trying to figure out how to get G, C, and D faster. How do I not just, put your finger on every string? How do I do that? And there's this old song, this old bluegrass song called it's so country, but "Boil Them Cabbage Down" is the name of the bluegrass song, and
Nice.
it's obviously a higher tempo, but you can slow it down, and it's helps you G, C, and D. So you don't have to play it that fast, but then you work your way up to it.
Right.
So that was like my goal, and I was determined. And then once I got that down to where I could play it, I ended up learning "Today I Started Loving You Again" was one of my first songs that I learned because Merle Haggard was so influential in my family's band. My grandfather, big fan. My dad, that was who, like, when I was learning how to sing, they're like, listen to Haggard, hear how he sings, hear how he says it. And so I learned that for two reasons. One, I was brought up on that, that era of country music.
Right.
So I wasn't really listening to like what my friends were listening to because that wasn't what my family listened to, and like I was brought up on Merle Haggard, Porter Wagner, Ray Price, Bobby Bear, Waylon, Willie, that whole generation. And of course I'm a 90s kid, but at that time when you're, 8-9 years old, that's really just what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And so it was a combination of wanting to impress them, but also that I loved "Today I Started Loving You Again." I love "Green Grass at Home," So my first song, it was probably like a few months, probably like 5 months before I got "Today I Started Loving You Again" kind of down. I wouldn't say it was great by any means, but I could do it.
And then, so throughout school, you were playing with him, you were honing your skills. And then after graduation, were you focused on getting to Nashville? Like, is that the first time that you traveled to Nashville to sort of get a feeling for it before you started your band?
I went to Nashville one time. Well, no, I'm sorry. Before I moved, I went a few times. My first trip to Nashville I was 15. And
Oh,
my
okay.
dad and my stepmom brought me up, and we walked the streets, walked downtown, the whole deal. And a couple publishers, talked to me and gave me some advice, and we did all that. So that was my first trip in. But I was going back and forth quite a bit doing demos. My buddy Jeff Hurst got me. I met him back home in Florida, and I was already playing shows at this point.
Oh, okay.
And I was playing the Lake County Fair. And I didn't know that my people were telling him about me, and my mom was telling him about me, and then my mom was telling me about him, and where I'm from, there's not a lot of music coming out, I mean, there's a lot of talent there, I grew up watching, guys that, played the circuit, but there wasn't, I didn't feel like, or I didn't know at the time, I guess, somebody trying to do what I was doing, like wanting to move to Nashville and actually give this thing a shot,
Right.
So I met Jeff Hurst. He happened to be walking by my show at the fairgrounds, right?
Oh,
This is the
really?
music thing I was doing. And he told a buddy of ours, he was like, hey man, I saw this, Michael Ray guy. And he's like, that's who we've been telling you about. And then we ended up meeting and writing songs. And I started coming back and forth up here, doing demos and learning, studio work. And it was all because of him. So he got me in the door that way. But I knew, man, I knew in middle school that I wanted to move to Nashville, and I knew, especially after that first trip, you come up and you see the Batman building for the first time, the AT&T building, and you're just like, what? I knew then that I wanted to move here someday and make it a thing. So I moved when I was 22. Finally got to move when I was 22 years old up here, and I never forget my graduation. Man, they had everybody was going to college or doing something, and then they're like Michael Roach moving to Nashville. That was it. So luckily it worked out. So
that's funny. And I know when you first started going with Jeff to Nashville, there was the Warner Nashville connection, right? And you would always drive past there and tell him one day I'm going to be with them.
Dude, it was so weird, man. I don't know why. Warner Brothers obviously a massive name in entertainment. So I don't know why. I don't know why it wasn't Sony or anywhere else. But every time we drive past the Warner Music Nashville building, I would tell him, I'm like, I'm gonna be signed there. I'm telling you, that's the place. And he'd be like, yeah, you are. We just kind of dream. That'd be cool. And then I ended up signing a record deal with Warner Music Nashville, and so it was a weird, I do believe in manifestation. I do believe in putting your thoughts out. And I didn't know what manifestation meant back then, so right. I guess I'm doing that, but unknowingly. I didn't know that was a word, then, but yeah, we drive past, because it was like a little ritual we would do. We drive down 16th or 15th, 16th and 17th, the Music Row. And then we drive down Broadway. And then we'd go to our right, or we'd go to the studio and record, our demo.
Right.
And it was just kind of a thing for us to do that kind of got our head in the right spot, but also kind of was inspiring, man. You drive through Broadway and you hear the bands playing. You hear, you go down Music Row and you see, at the time, now they're sadly destroying a lot of those buildings, but at the time, a lot of those buildings were still up, so you had the history of where, this song was written, or there's Waylon's old office, or, and so just kind of gave you the vibe of Music City, before you moved or before you got going. So it was fun.
And how long after you started making those trips with Jeff did you record your debut, not on Warner, but just your independent debut?
It was a few years. We were, I was recording up here, going back down. We would shop songs around, and then try to get a pub deal. He was trying to get a pub deal at the time, and we were just shopping them around, doing what we needed to do. So I would take those demos, and that's what I would use to sell, down home at shows, and then I would take them and record more songs or whatever. So I want to say it had to have been, it was probably a few years before I started recording and released an independent record.
Yeah. And with that independent record, I find it funny all the time that when people sign a major label to a major label and they release albums, the independent albums they had almost disappear. It's almost like they didn't happen.
You're one of the very few people that's ever brought it up. Yeah.
And why is that? I know some people are ashamed of what they've done in the past, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. That can stay there. But, if you're proud of it, why does it have to kind of be pushed to the side?
I don't know why that happens. That's funny. It does happen. Yeah, I don't know why that happens, but I think it's probably a little embarrassment because a little bit of you're trying to figure things out. Some people knock it out of the park on the first try, but majority don't. But I think there might be. I don't know. I also think that all of a sudden when you get a record deal, all those songwriters that you looked up to and you listen to their music, they'll write with you. They're sending you those songs.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, instead of this tiny bubble that you had, Now everybody you looked up to and more is sending you songs. So there's different melodies you've never heard. They're the best of the best. So there's different melodies. There's all these different things that all of a sudden it's like you walk through this door, they're like, welcome, and then you walk through it. Here's all of this that you get, and so I think maybe a lot of that is once you get that record deal, you get those options and you get to meet and write and have those songs pitched to you.
Right.
And then you go, well, man, all right, well, what if we went this route? Oh, I love that. Or let's write with this guy. So then it's such a cool energy, man, when you sign your deal. There's no other energy like it. You know what I mean? Like you did it. You get your chance at bat. You get a chance to go up and swing the bat at the ball. And there's just something really cool. So I think it's probably, just the fact that you get all of these options, and the label's looking at it like, well, you've already had this out. You know what I mean? And now with streaming and everything, having an album out doesn't just mean a physical copy, like you've had it out. So maybe people have heard it, maybe they didn't. But I know people that have kept a couple songs off of a debut record and, turned them into hits. But I think it's just the fact that you get all these options, I remember my publisher, BJ Hill, calling me going, hey man, send me a list of writers you want to write with. And I shot for the fence. I was like, Jeffrey Steele, Casey Beathard, Bob DiPiero, I was like, that's who I want to write with. That's who I remember opening up CDs and seeing underneath the name of the song, these little names. And my dad's the one that told me, I was like, who's Jay Steele? And he's like, well, there's songwriters that moved to Nashville that write songs, and then they pitch them. They don't tour. They're not go out on the road.
Right.
And so I shot for the fence when he first asked me and he made it happen, so it's cool to be buddies with those guys now, but I think it's all because you just get that option to hear all these new songs and new music.
Right. And you talk about the writing side. Now on that independent, you had quite a bit of writing credits on it, but since then, from what I saw, there's only the one writing credit that you've had on your two previous albums, and that was Run Away With You that you did with John Rich. Now, is that right? Am I right?
Yeah, I've had other cuts. As a writer, I've had cuts on other artists.
Okay.
This EP coming out, I wrote 2 of the 5 that are on the EP coming out. My biggest thing in writing and during those times too, man, music was changing. It was kind of going more of a pop country feel.
Right.
And, I'll be real with you. I just didn't do that. I grew up on different stuff. But also I'm a firm believer in making the best album you can, and nobody brings up to George Strait that he didn't write 61 number ones. You know what I mean? Like, so, and Aldean, like Chesney, Chesney's a great writer. A lot of what I model my stuff after is after Chesney, like he's an incredible writer, but he cuts outside songs because they fit that record. Right. And they make the best album, And so for me, I was just kind of learning the writing game too at the time, as far as like commercial success and what makes a hit on radio. And as I'm learning this, I'm getting sent all these songs, from writers. And so I again, go back to Chesney and going, you make the best record and album you can for your fans, for yourself, and whether if you write it, cool. If not, cool. And I think too, at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to write about or sing about as far as like an artist of my own. And so I cut a lot of outside songs, and now, I'm writing more because I feel like I just know myself better. I feel like I know what I want to say better, and I know confidently what I want to do and put out. So during those times, especially that Amos record, I didn't write anything on that record. And, we were on tour. We were doing 130 something, 140 dates a year. There was also, in the studio here and trying to write. My brain doesn't do well with all 9,000 things going on at once. So I was switching management at the time. I hired on new managers, and it was just a different time. But I'm excited to be writing and seeing songs that I'm writing connect with people like Picture has.
Yeah, and before we talk about Picture and the new stuff, let's just talk about when your debut hit. And I know you talk about that special moment when you sign with Nashville and
Mm-hmm.
just what that means and the doors it opens. And then you release your first single, Kiss You in the Morning. And when that had the success it had, what did that mean for you at that point in showing you the journey that you were about to take?
Dude, it was wild, man. Like it was like I remember my first January 6th was my first day of radio tour. And I just remember being like, we're doing it. Like, we get our shot, we're doing it. And then to see the radio PDs, program directors, and other people excited about the song, I just remember so much of it kind of feeling like I was an out of body experience. Like I was like, holy cow, man, we're doing this. This is really happening. And then to see it with the ads, and then we got On the Verge with iHeart, and it just continued to grow before we even released it. And it broke a few records at Warner, and it set it, put me in a different spot just launching. And we debuted top 40, and it's like 26 weeks we're at number one. And I just like, in that time, I lost my grandfather. There's a lot of different things going on, and I just remember being on this like real crazy whirlwind of emotions. Like this is wild, man. Like we're actually doing it.
Since then, the journey you've been on, like it's progressed quickly. And I saw a post on social media when you played Red Rock, and you captioned it, "Hey, 15-year-old Michael, you're opening for Old Dominion at Red Rock."
Yeah.
We did it. And so with how quickly this has all gone for you, do you ever get the chance to look back and look at your 5-year-old self rocking out your Kermit guitar and realize what you've been able to do?
Dude, my grandfather always told me, my dad did too, when you're climbing a ladder, no matter what it is, stop once in a while and just take in the view. Look down, see how far you come. What we do is so fast paced, life's so fast. You're bound, no matter what you do, you as you get older, you realize how fast life is. But when you're gone all the time, it's a different city every night. You're on a bus, on a plane, in a car, in a van, whatever it is. Dude, the days months turn into days. You know what I mean? You're like, holy cow. And so if you don't, and I encourage a lot of young artists to do the same thing. If you don't take in the fact that you just released your first album, you just released your first single, you just played Red Rock, you just played Joe's in Chicago, you just played whatever that is, it means something, and there's a point in time when that was your biggest goal.
Right.
There's a point in time where your child or your teenage self learning guitar in your bedroom just wanted to play Joe's on Weed in Chicago, right? But you've gone past that and you haven't even looked at it yet,
right?
Because you're just constantly looking at the next thing. And you got to keep your eye on the goal and look for the next thing, but you got to stop once in a while on that ladder and take in that view, or else you don't get that again, and there are some moments where I do look back and went, man, I wish I would have slowed down a second during that time. You know what I mean? And like really, really brought that in. But for the most part, I feel really good in the fact that I've tried to take in every moment like that, and constantly remind myself that at some point in time, my little mullet wearing, diaper wearing, Kermit the Frog playing self didn't even think the Opry was an option, and now I'm about to play it for the 57th time. And so those moments, I do always try to remind myself, take that in, man. This is pretty cool.
And as far as 2020 goes, there was a lot of challenges for you. I know you lost some family members, the divorce, and everything that happened was difficult, but was it almost a blessing because it sort of did allow you to internalize and to slow down? And it feels like if that wouldn't have happened, your music that's coming out right now would have probably looked very different.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I think 2020 was a hard year for everybody. Obviously, the world shutting down and everybody still trying to figure that out, and the divide that it caused by everybody, and the confusion, it hit everybody hard, and then everybody also on top of that had their personal things, and I had mine, losing family members, divorce. I think you can't do anything more when you hit bottom. You can't do anything more than to go, okay, we're up from here.
Right.
Where else do I go from here?
Yeah.
When I went home to Central Florida, and I did more hunting than I've done in 5-6 years. I hung with family that I hadn't hung out with in probably 5 or 6 years, because we've been on the road. You pull in, you see the people you can see, and then you bust back out, or you fly back out. So I actually got to spend time with my cousins, got to actually spend time with people. And I, man, I really believe that this whole album and who I am as a person grew because of those challenging times. And I think that I just had no other thing to do than look in the mirror, reflect, and go, okay, what are you doing from here? You're going to sit in this shit and, waller in it and whatever, which I probably did for a little bit, or are you going to strap your boots and go do something, and figure out what it is. So I think the combination of everything, even those trying times, I think it was God making a big work in me, you know what I mean? And making a big move in myself and where I'm going. And man, I truly, I'm very grateful for the last 2 albums, but this album, dude, this is what I moved to Nashville to do. This is me confidently writing songs, recording songs, and going, hey, dude, you want to know Michael Ray? Here it is.
Talk about the emotion in writing Picture and that day after your uncle's wake and not canceling that right and going in there, and just what that experience was like.
Yeah, we wrote it the day of his
day of. Okay.
Yeah, day of. Yeah. And it was, for whatever reason, I didn't cancel that right. We moved every other one. And I remember telling BJ, my publisher, I said, man, let me just go see how my dad's doing, what I need to do. And everybody, my family, like I said, they're all tight. So they got everything already situated. And, they were just going through pictures and hanging out and having some drinks and doing what you do during that time, telling memories and, getting emotional here and there, but just laughing, and we were going through these photos, and my buddy Ryan goes, man, isn't it weird that no matter what you do, one day, we'll all just be pictures that people have, and that's it. And that might be the only thing somebody has, and they hold on to it. I actually have one of the photos that we use in Picture right here. That's
nice.
That's the picture that's out of the guitar.
Yep.
But and he said that, and it was like 3 a.m. and I was like, write it down on a piece of paper, And I got there the next day, and what a lot of people don't know is my uncle Herbie, my other uncle, I was using his house to write it. And so I get there, and he has this picture. He has no clue about what happened that night before. And he goes, man, look at this. There's this photo of me and my buddy. We were like 19 or 20 years old at this time, and it's them holding 2 beers in this field. And I said, oh, no way. And he goes, yeah, my friend just sent it to me. And I said, do you still talk to that guy? And he said, man, sadly, a few months after this photo was taken, he took his own life. And so that second verse is about my uncle and his buddy, might just look like buddies and some cold beer, but when it's my time to leave, that's all someone have left of me. And so that whole, it was just like this crazy thing, dude. And I went in with Hardy and David, and I was like, man, I got this idea, and I really think it'd be cool, but I want to write, I think we write it like, I want it to be very autobiographical. I want to talk about people. And they grabbed onto it, and being, the hit writers they are, helped me craft it out, man. And it was a cool moment. Hell, dude, I think we talked for 2 hours. I think we wrote for 30 minutes. I think the song just kind of fell out, man.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I wish we had more time. And I hope that maybe once the EP is released, maybe we can connect back and talk more about the album, talk more about the songs, talk more about the experience, and really dive into that new music.
Dude, I would love to, man. Absolutely. I won't be doing any domesticated laundry around the house, losing track of time, I promise you.
Thank you guys once again so much for listening, and thank you to Michael for stopping by and sharing his story. Be sure to go check out his new single, Picture, on whatever streaming service you get your music on, and be sure to look out for his EP coming later in the year. Please also make sure you are liking, sharing, following, subscribing to us on whatever streaming service you're listening on, and head over to social media. Give us a follow there as well so you can stay up to date on all the exciting episodes coming up on The Music Made Me. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.